All right. Well, shalom from Jerusalem. It's great to be here again, especially on this day, All Saints, All Saints Sunday. All Saints Day obviously was on the 1st of November, but it often can be celebrated on either Sunday on either side, and we've chosen to do this one now during the week. I don't know about you, but I got what are you? Non-conformists, so people who are not part of a traditional church, come up to me a few times and say, what really is this All Saints Day? I don't like the idea of worshipping saints, Aaron. I don't think we should do that. Well, I'm not actually worshipping a saint. And they go, yeah, but isn't this Halloween? Isn't this a very pagan thing? Actually, they borrowed it from us, but and as part of my explanation, I would say to people, well, look, we often have actually memorials just about in every capital city of our fallen soldiers. So we have a remembrance day for them, and we'll light a candle forever, the eternal flame. And if you're an American, then trust me, if someone says 9/11, that's deep stuck in people's memory, and they have all kinds of services and memorials based on that day. And when there's a special day that comes around every year, you like to celebrate that every now and again, although no one ever then tells you what your age is anymore, but still celebrate it, okay? Birthdays and such. Now, we'll remember those things, but we won't remember the saints of God. Sounds a little off. So what really is All Saints Day? Well, the history of it is very interesting because it starts in the 4th century. So that's in the 300s. So after Christianity became legal, okay, it wasn't the official religion at start. Once it became legal, then the Christians could now publicly admit that they were Christians and not get fed to the lions and stuff. And they had this 300-year history of persecution. The first 300 years, people who believed in Jesus were killed. And young, old, slave, free, rich, poor, and they needed to be remembered. So the early church said, we have to remember all the people who went before us because they've helped us get to this point. And they never gave up. So it was put in the calendar. Originally, it was stuck very close to Easter or Passover because both of those, Easter, Passover, were often celebrated on the same day, right? The 14th of Nisan. That was known as the Quarto Decimans, for those that want to go and look up a little bit of history for us over there in the East for the Greeks. Because that was like one of the big festival dates that they had still in the calendar. And so they sort of just started shoving things from that point on and sort of spreading out. And then over time, it got moved to November, probably because Easter and Holy Week and Passover was getting a little crowded. So just sort of spread it out so that the martyrs, of which there have been many, like people did not stop dying for the Lord just because it became a legalized religion. And so that we would think about our fallen brothers and sisters. So that's what we're supposed to be doing at this time and on All Saints Day. Now, the world, of course, couldn't give a spit about Christianity at all. And so they don't pay attention to this. In fact, the enemy has come along and taken this Memorial Day and turned it into something really not fun. Originally, it's called All Hallows Eve, right? And the actual day, All Saints Day, was started its celebration in the evening, like Christmas Eve, okay? Why do they do that? Because that's Jewish, right? In the Bible, you start days, it was evening and it was morning. So in Jewish tradition, every festival or holiday starts in the evening of the previous, what we would call the day. And that's exactly what the early church were doing, because there was still lots of Jewish people as members of the church having quite an influence in the way we were doing things. And so All Hallows Eve, very important. That kicked off the day. And then unfortunately, that was captured by the culture and it ended up becoming something completely different. What we would today call Halloween. And the readings set for the day are sort of there to reflect on heroes of faith and what they actually can mean for us, both in the past and in the future. And so the tradition has been, you always read Revelation 7. I threw in Hebrews, because Hebrews comes around, I think, once every three years. Last year, we read Luke, so that would have been Luke 6, right? The Beatitudes. This year we do the Matthew's version. And there's so much to say in all of them. I like Revelation because he looks into heaven and he sees this myriad of people, and he's from every tribe and language, which screams out that when you get to heaven, you're carrying the body that you've got now. Yeah, new, of course, but it's got racial distinctions, and it still keeps different language. We don't all, unfortunately, learn to speak Hebrew when we're in heaven. You know, people say, "Oh, Hebrew is the holy tongue, so we're going to speak Hebrew when we get to heaven." And I keep saying, "Yeah, do you know the enemy speaks Hebrew as well?" You know, be careful when sort of saying, "Oh, the holy tongue." You know, there's the mystical language and it's like magic. But anyway, everybody gets a new body, and God loves diversity. And he looked on this world, but God so loved the world. He loves red, black, yellow, and white, and he's not ashamed of calling it red, black, yellow, and white. And he's not ashamed of everybody having some Japanese, bit of Chinese, bit of Russian, bit of Ukrainian, bit of Hebrew, English, okay, all kinds of languages, maybe not Scottish, but yeah, everybody's there. So he loves the accent too, Kate, very much. And we get robes and palm branches. And you always think, wow, this is incredible. There's actually plants in heaven. If there's no plants in heaven, that means you have to have brought your own palm branch. Which if you die and forget to bring your palm branch, is going to be really embarrassing when you get to St. Peter at the gates and he goes, "Hey, Aaron, did you bring your palm branch?" "Oh, no, man, I forgot." "Is it okay if I go back? I know it's going to look really weird to mum and dad, but I'm going to do it anyway." And go grab my palm branch. But it describes again that in the Jewish tradition, which is the authors of the New Testament, predominantly Jewish people, they had their understanding of heaven was that it looked remarkably like Earth. Okay, it's got gravity, right? Otherwise, no one's standing; they're floating, okay, before the Lord. It's got oxygen; otherwise, there's no one singing or praising or worshiping. Certainly, no fire. And there's plants, which means there's probably an ecological structure. There's animals. Okay, the white horse is not the only horse in heaven. He's not waiting to appear where he can come down to earth so he can be with other creatures that look like him. Okay, there's probably whole herds of these things. And so the idea of heaven looking remarkably like earth is actually borne out by the vision sequences that you see from our heroes. And they praise, they worship the one who sits on the throne and the Lamb. You go, hang on, that's two beings. Well, where do you get the concept of two powers in heaven? That's a Jewish concept, which comes from Daniel. And so often when you have in the lectionary, when you read Luke, you often read the Daniel portion. Those two go together. And in Daniel 7, Daniel looks into heaven and he sees the Ancient of Days, but he also sees the Son of Man, and he also sees thrones. He sees multiple chairs, not just one. So he's the guy, Rabbi Akiva, who's a generation after Jesus. He's a rabbi who actually declared that there are two powers in heaven. It's obvious from the text. Okay, one is God and the other is the Messiah. Revelation beat him by about 30 years by also declaring that, where the saints were already saying, we worship the one on the throne and we worship the Lamb, the two powers in heaven. So, all saints, what does it mean to have memory, and why should we remember them? Well, biblical memory, as we've discussed many times here, isn't about forgetting. Memory is about doing things and putting things into action, because God remembers. And when God remembers, he does stuff. So God remembered Noah, he drained the water. God remembered Rachel, opens up her womb. God remembers Israel, and he takes them out of Egypt. Memory is supposed to lead you into action. So reminding ourselves of saints that have gone before us is meant to spur us into some sort of action. And the readings that are given to us for our contemplation today, to remind us that, because they offer hope, that even the death of heroes, right, is never in vain. And that death is never the final straw. There's something beyond, and there's no such thing as a death in vain. There's a reason for it, and it gives it a meaning. And so in our reading on the Sermon on the Mount, we see that Jesus, in Luke, it's on a plain, but in Matthew, it's on a mount, really presenting the idea of Jesus being the new Moses. Right? Moses went on to Mount Sinai, and Jesus goes onto a mountain. It's an unnamed mountain. There could be any mountain in the Galilee. But if you happen to go to Israel, then you can actually go to the Mount of Beatitudes. They picked one, and it's got a very lovely Catholic church on it, built in an octagonally shaped rotunda, very similar to the Dome of the Rock. Okay, that's a classic style over here in the Middle East. Okay, octagonally shaped churches, and it's a convent, so it's guarded and cared for by nuns. A beautiful garden and a great opportunity to sit down in groups, contemplate the Beatitudes, have communion, or a little talk or a lecture, whichever. But just like Moses stood up and gave a summary, like what Deuteronomy is, sort of summarizes the first 4 books, Jesus does the same sort of thing. He gets up and he presents a summary of what it's like to be in the kingdom of heaven. And in its broadest sense, the Beatitudes are a complete challenge to whichever worldview you've got. Okay, you've got the kingdom of heaven and its attitudes, or the Beatitudes, or the things that make you happy or blessed. In Hebrew, the word is ashrei, asher, from joy. So the happy one, the blessed one. These are the things that actually make you happy, as counter to the system of the worldview of its system, which is like political power, wealth, riches. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor. That's counter to wealth and power and control, and then whatever your woke stuff is, okay, where we turn it into a giant piece of collective socialism and take everybody's stuff and just give it to me, right? Okay, new form of theft. The peacemakers, those who are poor in spirit, those who who mourn, instead of trying to make sure that everybody's just straight equal, you come up to whoever that they you join into every emotion that you encounter. You don't try to make everybody's emotion the same. You just if you're crying, I'll cry with you. You laugh, I'll laugh with you. If you're mourning, I'll mourn with you. You dance, I'll dance with you. Poorly, but I'll do it anyway. Okay. If you're singing, I'll just shut up and listen, because that'll make a better noise. There's other things that you do, but you join in, and this is the kingdom of heaven. This is faith in action. This is the vision that Jesus has to present to the world. Now, these are not. Well, first of all, this would have been really frustrating for Jesus's community, who really wanted to hear the militant kingdom. Right? Well, let's smash the Romans, Jesus. Blessed are the meek. Who can? Or blessed are the cheesemakers. Okay, everyone saw the Life of Brian short for this. The people who wanted to bring back the Maccabees, this would have been not what they wanted to hear. And yet Jesus is saying, actually, my kingdom's not militaristic, even though God is commander of the heavenly armies. He's got an intense array of warriors on his side. Right? Remember Elisha pulled back the veil of his servant and said, you look to see how many are with us. You know, armies everywhere. But God doesn't need to smash things. His kingdom's very subtle, and it's made up of meek heroes. It's made up of people who speak quietly. It's made up of people who love and bless, and those are the ones that are inherit the earth. Isn't that an interesting thing that the Beatitude says? Blessed are the meek, for they will make up the kingdom of heaven, and they will inherit the earth. Okay? Not heaven, earth. Right? This world is the future. Right? God makes a new heaven and a new earth. But why make a new earth if we're all going to be with him in heaven? Because actually the two become one. As the Revelation talks about, the Messiah comes to earth because God so loved the world. He want to destroy it, wanted to make it better again. And so it's what Jesus is presenting to his followers, and that is embraced by people so willingly that they will die for it, is this subtle kingdom that that works without ego, without self-aggrandizement. It works for the pleasure of others, for the good of others, it works in ways of gentleness and kindness, and these kinds of things. It's completely against the culture of the world around us, and that's why they hate it. Okay? They can't stand this kind of stuff. You know, like how is it possible that a culture despises Christianity like this? Right? It's illogical, it's irrational, but it's what we have, because we know that behind the antagonists is a deadly power, the enemy, the evil one that works against all the plans of God, and so you end up with things like, blessed are the poor, and that they make up the kingdom of heaven. Why? Why is it that the poor are the ones that make up the kingdom of heaven? There's something wrong with wealth? No. Nothing, because many of the heroes of God are wealthy. Okay? Just take your pick. Pick one. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Solomon, wealthy as all heck. And but what they didn't allow their wealth to lead them into greed, which is a form of idolatry, which is what Paul says. And you can be poor and still love money, right? You can be poor and just be obsessed with greed, and so it's the what Jesus is one of his displaying in his movement is that there'll be no love of money in my kingdom. You'll have it, and you'll use it, and it'll go, and it'll come, and it'll go. But in the end, what's really important are you loving your neighbor? Are you loving your enemies, even though you still have enemies? Are you seeking to uplift and encourage the other? There's a lot of the other that's here, and so what you find is, as you go through history, there were all kinds of people who were so attracted to this kingdom, that were so attracted to the vision and message of Jesus, they were willing to die for it. They said, this kingdom is so powerful and is such the thing that I want, that I'm not going to leave it. You're not going to be able to take me out of it and put me back into your world system where everybody hates each other and you actually just want to murder each other, and you want to take everybody's stuff, and you want to get, in the name of inclusiveness, you want to get rid of diversity, right? And so that we're all exactly the same, and no one will be different, and the world will lose its color, it'll lose its majesty, it'll lose its beauty, it'll lose everything. But there were some people who they were never going to lose that, and so they died for it. And now we don't have many icons at Christchurch, those that have ever been there, but we do have one, and it's from the Coptic Church, and it's an icon of the martyrs that were in Libya, where ISIS took a group of Egyptian Coptics to a beach, and then they filmed them cutting them all their heads off. And as they went to all of them, confess Muhammad or die. None of them refused to deny Jesus. We're often, as Protestants, always self-obsessed, thinking we're the only true heroes out there on the planet. And it's like, no, actually, these guys suffered, and they bravely said, no, I'm part of the kingdom of heaven. You will not take me out of it. And their death so impacted one of the executioners that he turned around and said that what they believe in is true. And so ISIS killed him, and he wouldn't deny it. So he became a believer right then and there, and he died right then and there. And so the icon has all these Egyptians looking exactly the same, and then one black guy. And he was the Sudanese guy who ended up joining the team. And what the book of Hebrews reflects on, chapters 11 and 12, is it gives us this long litany of the heroes of faith. And it says these people had faith, and it describes that faith as things we haven't seen, hope for the future. But it's not just some esoterical thing that you sort of sit down and contemplate your navel. Faith made these guys do something. By faith, Abraham left. By faith, Enoch walked with the Lord. By faith, Noah built an ark. They actually believed in something. They put their faith and their hope and their trust, put it into practice. And so faith is something that you do. And so these guys, all these martyrs that we remember today, we reflect on, there are so many. Then they're still alive, right? You looked in Revelation, and there's all these people hanging around the throne. Well, in that case, they're people who went through a particular time called the tribulation. But Hebrews says we have a cloud of witnesses. And, this is a small problem for those that believe in soul sleep, okay? Because Hebrews is actually saying they're witnesses, that they're watching, they're paying attention. What are they doing? Well, I don't know, probably praying, probably interceding for us, cheering us on. But I can tell you one thing they probably are asking us is, what are you doing with the life that we died for? Right? We didn't give up, so the kingdom of heaven kept going. As Tertullian, one of my favorite of the church fathers, okay, North African, like many of the early church fathers were North African. Christianity in its beginning was North African, okay, and pretty much was that way until Islam came along and wiped it all out, and it sort of moved north into Europe. But Tertullian is famous. Who's the guy who invented the word the Trinity? Okay, because he was looking for a word, trying to explain God. So he created that word for us to help us in our understanding of the divine. He said, well, the blood of the martyrs, and there were many in his day, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Every time you keep killing us, then more of us will grow, because you'll see how we love, and you'll see how we die. And so the ones that died, they're challenging us by their life and death. What are you doing with life? I gave mine up. Now, what are you doing with it? And that's a hard challenge, because sometimes it's easy for the Muslim guy to come into the room, put a gun to your head, and say, curse Jesus or die. And you say, well, that's an easy one. I'll see Jesus very soon, thanks. But what happens when the guy doesn't come in the room and kill you? That means you have to live tomorrow, doesn't it? For Jesus. Can you do that? You have to do that. It's one of the whole points of this day is that we remember the heroes that went before us, who are encouraging us, so that we continue to walk before the Lord now. That all these guys who gave up their lives, which was not in vain, that as the kingdom have grown, what are we doing with it? Are we defending the faith once received? Are we preaching the gospel? Are we giving people life and hope? Are we challenging the culture, saying your culture doesn't offer much? In fact, it actually takes everything away from people. Look at what Jesus gives. Look what God gives to the world. This is the kingdom of heaven. And this is the thing that gives you a blessing. This is the things that actually truly make people happy. The poor in spirit. So, being salt and life, being salt and light doesn't make the world happy. Right? This is what makes you happy. Blessed are the poor. Happy are the poor. Being salt and light is important. Right? People have to be prepared to embrace the truth. And in Christianity, unfortunately, part of that truth involves suffering. Right? Suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope. And so the heroes that have gone before us have given all of that story, and their story doesn't die. That's another one of the amazing truths. Yes, some of them are encapsulated in icons, but they're all written in that, not only in the Lamb's Book of Life, written on the palms of God, and they're written in people's memories. Those memories never die, because you're constantly telling those stories again and again and again, and it's from these people. And so they're a blessing, and they're wearing robes of righteousness. What are all these robes of righteousness? Well, as we read in the scriptures, these are the deeds of the saints. This is the guys who put their faith into practice. So that's the challenge, brothers and sisters, as we remember all those who went before us and gave up their lives for us. What are we doing with the life of God? Then let's put the kingdom of heaven into practice. Let's put everything Jesus taught us in Matthew 5 into practice. So help us God. Amen.